Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
What if an outwardly perfect family life hides cheating and deceit? Learn how one unexpected discovery destroyed 25 years of marriage. Today's story is a similar story. Enjoy watching it. A year ago, our children threw us a party to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. It was a grand event with all the trappings. All our friends were invited, and we received a bunch of gag gifts. Life seemed pretty good at that moment, even though I knew we were slowly growing apart while living in the same house. My wife Carol and I met in our final year of university, and it's been history ever since. We fell in love, got married, and had 2 wonderful sons, both of whom are now graduating from college. We are now almost empty nesters and should have enjoyed the fruits of our labors, but we had a little problem. I'm younger, but she's not. I didn't get physically younger, rather, I had a midlife crisis when I turned 50 this year. Don't let anyone tell you that 50 is just a number and you shouldn't worry about it, because it is. I began to look back and ask myself, what if, and I was determined never to say those words again. The pressure of caring for children was relieved, and for the first time, we had a lot of free time and money. It was like a huge weight had been lifted from my chest, and I felt more alive than I had in a long time. I received 4 weeks of vacation time from work each year and had accumulated another 4 weeks of unused sick and vacation time over the years. What the hell was I going to do with 8 weeks off? I started making changes, small ones at first. I stopped dressing like my father. My suits and my entire wardrobe were outdated to say the least and needed to be updated for the 21st century. Plus, I had somehow gained some fat around my waist over the last 10 years and had to get rid of it before I went crazy. I bought myself new clothes. When I told Carol I wanted more salads and less meat, she didn't say anything. But when I started getting up early to go to the gym before work, she noticed. She probably thought it was just a phase, like my New Year's resolutions that eventually passed, but it didn't. It took me 3.5 months of hard work to lose the 18 pounds I had gained. It gave me more energy, and it seemed like our intimacy life was fading over time. Steve, I'm not 20 years old anymore. I can't do this 5 times a week, she told me very firmly. You don't take Viagra, do you? What if we agree on 3 times a week? I asked, or rather begged, Carol if she would consider it. She said she would think about it but didn't guarantee anything. As usual, nothing has changed. You see, we are stuck in a rut. We both get up for work in the morning at about 6 o'clock, just 5 minutes apart. We drink coffee for breakfast together while I look through the newspaper. We both commute to work, which starts at 8 o'clock, and I leave between 5 o'clock and 5:30 for a 25-minute drive home. When I get home, I check my mail, change my clothes, and usually set the table. Carol arrives at 4:30, and by the time I arrive, she is already cooking something. We have dinner, wash the dishes, and then read the newspaper. At this point, we split up and go about our business for the next 2 hours before getting ready for bed. I would lay out my clothes for the next day, brush my teeth, floss, and then sit in bed to watch the news. The next day, we did the same boring things over and over again. We were becoming like our parents, and I wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. It lifted her spirits, but it didn't bring us closer. When we didn't make love for the first week, I didn't say anything. When this went on for 2 weeks, I started dropping hints. Damn, when this went on for 3 weeks. Steve, what kind of question is that? Of course I like it. Then why don't we do this more often? Steve, we do this all the time. Honey, it's been 3 weeks. I haven't bothered you, but I wanted to wait and see how long you wouldn't notice. But it seems like you didn't notice. If so, we better get started because it's getting late. Carol, I don't see this as some kind of duty that needs to be done and forgotten. I think of it as something special that brings us closer together, I tried to explain, but she didn't listen. Steve, do you want to do this or not? She finally asked, annoyed that I criticized her for not wanting to have intimacy anymore. It looks like no, I'm not in the mood anymore, I told her sharply. Let's get to work on this, otherwise, you won't let me forget it. I'll refuse, she said, getting up and going to the bathroom. I took 3 Advil for the headache I now had, went back to bed, and said goodnight to her with my back turned. "Don't say I didn't offer," Carol said with a disdainful tone as she opened her book. I stopped asking after that night. I moved my workouts from the morning to the evening, which meant we no longer had dinner together. I liked it better because it gave me a chance to relax after work and there were more people in the gym to socialize with. Carol started leaving me a plate of leftovers in the oven, but after 2 months that stopped, and I started making my own dinner or stopping after a workout for a snack. We were growing more and more distant from each other, and if I saw it, then she must have seen it too. It had been almost 4 months since our last lovemaking session, and I was determined to get her to initiate it, even if it took forever. My evening showers were getting longer and longer. I started replacing or updating my clothes piece by piece, and even a few women at work noticed, but my wife didn't say a word. "Are you going to stop being so depressed this year, or should I book you for next January?" Carol said as I turned off the light that night. "What?" "You heard me. You're playing a stupid game, and I'm tired of it," she said, with the tension in her voice that I was already used to. "Could you explain what game you're talking about?" I asked. "Steve, don't make a fool of yourself. Just because I don't give you intimacy 24 hours a day, you're sulking, but it won't work." She now screamed at me, "Carol, you asked me not to pester you about intimacy anymore. I'm just doing what you asked. You said you weren't 20 anymore and weren't interested in it, so I was just waiting for you to be in the mood. Don't tell me that crap. You're punishing me for not lying spread-eagled on the bed every night, but that won't work. I can take as much as you," she said smugly. "Listen to yourself, Carol. I wanted to make love to my wife, and you saw it as just another chore to do before bed. I decided to wait until you wanted to do it rather than have to, like you did," colorfully expressed. "Instead, you took it as a challenge to see how long I could last. It's quite pathetic. Looks like I was right a few months ago. You don't really enjoy it with me anymore, do you?" She just looked at me angrily and left the bedroom, slamming the door. I think this answered my question. Life became even more stressful after that night. Carol now slept in the guest room and tried to avoid me in the evenings. When I told her my company's corporate dinner was in 2 weeks, she simply shrugged. Saturday night before dinner, I had just showered and wondered why I couldn't hear Carol getting ready. After I finished getting dressed, I went to look for her. "Why aren't you ready yet?" "We have to leave in half an hour," I said to my wife, who was still dressed in shorts and a casual blouse. "I'm not going," she said. "How is it that you're not coming?" I asked in an unfriendly tone. "When you start treating me like a wife, I'll start acting like one. Until then, you're alone," she replied, crossing her arms over her chest. "Come on, Carol, stop talking nonsense and get dressed," I said. "I won't go," she repeated firmly. "Okay, keep playing your damn game," I said as I started to leave and grabbed my keys. I was angry, irritated, and with a bunch of other feelings. It was my company's annual dinner, and it was the first time I had to go alone, and I didn't like it. I told everyone that Carol wasn't feeling well and decided to have a good time anyway. I didn't even notice how many single women worked in my company. I guess when you're married, you don't pay attention to it. But that evening, I noticed it. I danced with each of them at least once. I'm not the best dancer, but I had no complaints. It looks like I drank a little more than I should have and needed help getting home. Diana from customer service lived next door to me and said she would make sure to get me there safe and sound. I ended the night with 2 more dances and 1 drink. As I walked out into the parking lot, my eyes became the size of saucers when I saw what Diana was driving, a black 2005 Mustang Cobra. "Oh my God, Diana, is this your car?" This was my husband's toy before he died a year ago. He died of cancer. "Can you handle such a machine?" "Have a seat, handsome, and I'll show you what's under the hood." Holy. "Oh my God," were just 3 phrases I used as we took the scenic route to my house. Diana changed gears like a racer and pinned me to the seat more than once. When she finally stopped bragging, we slowed down to the speed limit. I left her motionless for 6 months before I got up the courage to take her out. She told me, "I haven't driven a manual car in years and had to learn quickly. It has a lot of horsepower, but you get used to it. For me, it's a fun car for the weekend to get rid of the stress of the week. If only you weren't so drunk, I'd let you ride, she said, smiling at me. A drive that should have taken 20 minutes ended up taking an hour and a half because we stopped for coffee at Denny's. She told me about her husband, and I felt obligated to share about Carol. You two should stop playing these games. Life is too short to miss a day. Trust me, I know, she said. I agreed but told her that it takes two to tango. She sped down my street because there were no other cars on the road at 2 o'clock in the morning. No problem getting in. My problems will start as soon as I get in, I told her with a smirk. She once again told me to get my head and that she would see me at work on Monday. As I approached the house, I saw Carol look out the window for a second. It looked like she was waiting for me after all. Do you have any idea what time it is? Carol asked angrily. I have no idea who gave you a lift. This is Diana, she works with me, I replied. I saw her kiss you. What was that for? For nothing, I guess. I just danced with her tonight because my wife didn't bother to come with me, I said, looking at her. So if you'll excuse me, I'm tired and I've had too much to drink. If you want to discuss Diana and all the other girls I danced with tonight, I'll be more than happy to discuss it, but not now. Tomorrow, after breakfast, I said, going up the stairs. I slept like a baby. The next month, I tried to bury the hatchet. I didn't ask for intimacy but moved my training back to the morning so we could have dinner together again. I was getting sick of all this nonsense, but I decided to give it a couple more weeks before bringing it up again. That's when Carol did something stupid. I was going through my mail on Thursday when I found a receipt for a cruise ticket for next week. What is this? I asked, holding it in my hands. I was going to tell you tonight. My sister and I are going on a 7-day Caribbean cruise. It starts this Sunday and runs until next Saturday. I just need some time to think about my life, and you can't do it here with me, but you can with your sister. Carol, this is a big problem. If we get any further apart, there's a good chance we'll never get back together. Is that what you want? Steve, I don't know what I want anymore, she said, looking at me. Well, now I know the answer, I said, crumpling the ticket and throwing it at her. I think I heard her shout something after me, but I was already at the door before I heard it. I think I finally reached my limit. I went out to dinner alone and went to 2 strip clubs. These were the first breasts I had seen in 5 months, and they looked attractive to me. I spent $30 on tips and bought 2 girls drinks before finally leaving a little after 1 in the morning. As I drove home, I thought about all the places I wanted to visit but never had the chance. One that stood out was California wineries. I love wine and could never convince Carol to go there. She thought it would be boring as hell. I figured if she can go on vacation with her sister, then so can I. Carol was sleeping when I came home. She left me a note saying I was stubborn for leaving without giving her a chance to explain herself. Am I a fool? I said to myself, crumpling up the note and throwing it across the kitchen. I blurted out as I went upstairs and gathered enough clothes to leave. The Holiday Inn across from work was my logical choice since I had only slept 3 hours Thursday night. I told my secretary that, under no circumstances, should I receive any calls from my wife, Carol. I turned off my cell phone and decided to hide for the next 72 hours. I checked out the winery tours. A 10-day tour, including airfare, food, and transportation, would cost me just over $2,500. I booked it for Saturday when Carol was due back. I turned on my cell phone just once and found 8 calls from Carol asking where I was and why I wasn't answering my calls. I asked Diana what she was doing this Saturday afternoon. If you're not busy, I'd like to take you up on your offer for a ride. You think you're man enough to handle this? She said with a smile. I think we'll both figure it out, I said, smiling back. How about 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon? I got the address from her and said, I'll see you then. This would settle the matter for Saturday, and Carol would be leaving on Sunday, I thought to myself. On Friday, I stayed at work a little longer than usual and completed all my tasks. I applied for leave and requested my leave check next Friday. I was really looking forward to it. It's just a shame Carol won't be going with me. I slept in late Saturday morning and had a good breakfast in the hotel dining room. It was a beautiful day, and I made sure to dress appropriately in casual pants and sneakers. When I arrived, Diana had just finished washing the windshield. When she saw me, she smiled. "Just making sure you'd see clearly. You know, that's one of the first things that gets worse when you hit 50, she said, laughing. "I think it's number 3, but damn it, I don't remember numbers 1 and 2. Her car drove like a dream, a little stiff due to the racing suspension but still great. After some time, I could change gears without thinking about what I was doing and even try to accelerate sharply to 95 miles per hour before realizing I was approaching that speed. I need to buy something more exciting than my current Volvo. It's too much for me, but maybe a Corvette could do, I told her as we slowed to a more sedate pace. Something I could drive to work every day and it wouldn't bankrupt me. It was after 4 o'clock when we stopped for gas on the way back to her house. "Diana, do you have plans for dinner? I feel like I owe you more than a tank of gas for your troubles." "Don't you have plans with your wife this evening?" she asked, looking me up and down. "Not today." "How about it?" "My bill, if you say so," she replied. "It's agreed. I need to take a shower, so pick me up at around 6 if that's convenient for you." 6 is great, but dress casually. I know a good Italian place with great food and a great wine list. I had 5 more calls from Carol. I listened to each one as they became increasingly angry. "Damn it, Steve, call me. I'm leaving tomorrow and we need to talk before then," was the last message. I erased it along with the others. The food was excellent, and we shared a bottle of wine during our meal. I didn't bring up Carol, but Diana did. "How are things going with you and your wife?" she asked, sipping wine. "No way. She's leaving on a 7-day Caribbean cruise with her sister tomorrow," I told her. "I thought you were going to work on your problems." I tried, but she didn't want to talk to me. When I found out about the cruise, I just left. It was pretty stupid. Diana said without mincing words. She said she needed time away from me to think about us and where we were going. How can we work on a relationship if we don't discuss our problems? Anyway, she's leaving tomorrow for the Caribbean, and I'm leaving on a 10-day winery tour next Saturday. You're both playing catch-up, and you're both going to lose. Look, if it's over, so be it. Stop these stupid games. But if there's even the slightest chance, you should take it instead of going on separate vacations. She criticized what we were doing. We haven't slept in the same bed in over 6 months. I think my marriage is on the brink of death, and with her leaving, she's basically pulled the plug. When I get back, we'll split everything equally and go our separate ways. I still have enough years to start over before I'm 95 and in a wheelchair. I still think you're both making a mistake, but it's your life." I took her home a little after 10. She invited me in, saying she was alone because her only daughter was away at college, but I refused, knowing that if I had one more drink, I wouldn't be able to drive. The week dragged on as I waited for my trip. I sorted out my clothes and even bought 3 more sets because I had lost another 5 pounds. I figured I could fit everything into 2 medium suitcases, which was the maximum the airline would allow without extra charge. Carol sent me 2 emails telling me that when she got back, we needed to talk. This could be a problem since I wasn't even going to be here. I thought about not leaving any note but decided against it. I wrote, "See you in 2 weeks, at least she'd know I wasn't lying dead in some ditch." Why I didn't do this before is a mystery to me, because 2 days later I was hooked. Every other day we went to different wineries, did excursions during the day, and wine tastings in the evening. I was with a group of 4 couples, a mother and daughter, and 1 single woman besides myself. We ate together, went on excursions, and generally spent time together. On the 4th day, the only other single member of our group approached me. "Steve, right?" she asked. "Yes, it's me." "And your name is Lori, right?" I answered with a smile. "Since we're both here alone, would you like to join me on an optional excursion to the old Spanish missions tomorrow?" she suggested. "They need at least 2 people, and you're the only one I know here." "Sounds great. I'm glad I brought a good camera." They said it would take about 4 hours, including travel time and the tour itself. They will send a car for us right after our tour of the winery tomorrow. Lori organized everything. We sat together at dinner that evening. Lori was divorced and said she decided to do something new every year. She took up diving last year after receiving her certification and planned to go on a cruise to Alaska next year. After this, who knows, she told me. I see you are married. Why isn't your wife with you? She's on a 7-day Caribbean cruise. You don't like cruises? They weren't invited. She decided to take her sister with her, I said quietly, sipping a glass of wine. Sorry, I didn't mean to pry. It's okay. I wouldn't have gone anyway. She doesn't seem to value my company anymore. Well, her loss. So as of this evening, you're officially my date for the rest of this tour. That way, you'll always have someone to eat and talk to, Lori said. We all eat together and always talk to each other, I said, looking at her with confusion. I know, it's just official now, she said, smiling and taking my hand. The tour was great, and I enjoyed Lori's company more and more. She mentioned that her ex-husband replaced her with a younger model. I made him pay dearly for that act. Not only did I get half of our assets, but also monthly alimony, which pays for all my little adventures. It's a pity I didn't catch him sooner. I would have loved to try mountaineering, but at 45, I'm not going to take any risks. I've always wanted to go on a wind-powered cruise with few amenities, sailing from island to island. I would have done it already if it weren't for the fact that my wife is a sailor, and I paid for my son's college education before this year. Don't wait until you're too old to enjoy it, I told her. She warned me. We talked until almost midnight. Everyone else had already gone to bed. When I walked her to her cabin, she kissed me on the cheek and told me that she had a wonderful time and that I was the best companion. I bet you say that to every married man you date, I told her. Actually, no, because you're the first. If I didn't know your past, we wouldn't have even gone out tonight. I'm not a homewrecker. I've been in this situation, so you're lucky. Sleep well, we have a big day tomorrow, she said, hugging me and giving me another kiss. I returned to my hut excited and dealt with it on my own. Before I went to bed, I turned on my cell phone and, lo and behold, had 9 messages from Carol. The first ones were quite sharp and short, but the last 3 sounded much more sincere. Steve, please call. I don't know where you are, and I need to talk to you, she begged. Now she wanted to talk after basically telling me to go to hell for the last 4 months. I erased them again and turned off the phone. 2 days into our trip, we stopped at the most beautiful winery we could imagine. It was built on top of a hill overlooking a lush valley. That evening, during the wine tasting, the sun was setting, and it was almost breathtaking. I took a few pictures, even photographing Lori against the sunset. I was having the time of my life. The rooms at the wineries were simply small cubicles with minimal amenities, a shower, a bedroom, and a small living room. One by one, the couples retreated to their booths until only Lori and I remained. This is life, I said, dreaming out loud. I could get used to doing this full time, traveling to all the wineries here in California, and maybe then expanding to Italy and Germany. In 2 years, they'll have to take you on a forklift after you gain a couple 100 pounds, she laughed. Between the wine, cheese, and rich food, I think I've gained 5 pounds, she said, stroking her belly. You're not fat, you look good, I replied. Flattery will get you everywhere, she said, finishing her glass of wine. Let's go for a walk, she suggested, taking the last bottle of wine. The path was lit with torches as we slowly walked around the winery itself. I wasn't drunk, but I wasn't completely sober either. How long have you been awake? I asked. About an hour. It felt like someone was looking at me, she said with a smile, pulling me to her lips. My breath must have smelled bad enough to kill a fly, but she didn't seem to care. We'd better get up, the bus will pick us up at 9, she said, jumping out of bed, throwing off her t-shirt, and heading to the shower. The hour-long drive flew by in a flash as we chatted about all sorts of things. This was our last winery, and I wasn't happy about it at all. We still had a day and a half left and decided to make the most of them. Like all the other wineries, I bought a case of the wine I liked and sent it all home. I made a note to buy a wine cooler as soon as I got home. We walked hand in hand on our last night for dinner, feeling sad that our trip was coming to an end. That last night, We made a total of 6 toasts before we each went to bed in turn. I walked Lori back to her cabin and told her I had to pack my things that night. We kissed. "I'll miss you," we both said at the same time, laughing out loud. After another kiss and hug, she went inside. It took me about 20 minutes to pack all my things. I found my airline tickets and parking pass, making sure I knew where everything was. I had washed myself and had just crawled under the covers when I heard a knock on the door. I looked out the window and opened the door. "I couldn't sleep," was all she said as she entered my room and closed the door behind her. "I can't do what you want," I told her. "I know, but at least I can enjoy your warmth for one more night," she said. I pressed the spoon against her, and we spent the whole night hugging. With a kiss on the cheek, she left at 7 o'clock in the morning. At 9:30, we were already sitting on the bus on the way to the airport. "Steve, here's my email and cell number. No matter what happens, let's stay in touch," she said, touching my face. At the airport, Lori headed to Southwest Airlines, and I headed to Delta. I waved goodbye to her as we both headed back to reality. I had a lot to think about on the flight home. I expected to be back by noon and home no later than 3 o'clock, which gave me about an hour and a half before Carol got home from work. After I picked up my bags and the car, I headed home. I called my secretary, Jill, to see if there was anything urgent waiting for me at work. "Steve, everything went pretty smoothly since you did 90% of what you needed to do before you left. I just sat around painting my nails all week," she said, laughing. "However, Diana wanted to talk to you. If you'll allow me, let me put you on her line." "Customer support, Diana here. How can I help you?" she answered on her phone. "You can give me another ride in your car," I said in my normal voice. "Steve, why didn't you tell me you were going to California on a wine tour? I would have gone with you." "Diana, you know the place would have fallen apart if we weren't both here when we did," I said, trying to sound serious. "Besides, you'd probably want to play nurse for me, and I wouldn't have any fun." "You better not be having fun, if you know what I mean," she said, now a little angrily. "Don't worry, I was a good boy. Why did you want to talk to me?" "I had a surprise visit Tuesday morning when I got to work from your wife. She wanted to know where the hell you were. When I said I didn't know, she asked me point blank if I'd slept with you. Can you imagine?" she asked. "I hope you told her yes," I joked. "Are you crazy? You didn't see the way she looked at me." She was furious. However, I asked her how she liked the cruise, and she wanted to know how I knew that. I said you and I were discussing some things on a friendship level and that I knew you had problems with her. "Steve, we had a good conversation for about 45 minutes. I told her, like you, that you were playing with fire. Since she left, she's at least calmed down. She thinks you won't be coming home until Friday. Where did she get that information from? I have no idea. Just be careful. I think you're going to hell." I thanked her and told her I was sorry for all the trouble I had caused her and that I would see her in the morning if I was still alive. 10 minutes later, I pulled into my garage and was completely unpacked within half an hour. The house looked the same, at least she didn't destroy it while I was gone. I had just finished my second beer and was going through my email when I heard the garage door open. Damn, I was hoping for at least another half hour before she arrived. Carol burst into the kitchen. "Where the hell have you been? Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? Where have you been?" These were the only 3 questions I remember while she continued talking nonstop for about 5 minutes. "The wine valleys of California, and since you decided to take a vacation, I took one too," Carol said. "At least I told you where I was going," she shot back. "Carol, if something were to happen, how could I reach you if I needed to talk to you while you were on board? Could I reach you on your cell phone?" I asked. "You know our plan doesn't include the Caribbean. That's why I turned off my phone when I left." "What was it like being left in the dark?" I asked, looking at the nervous Carol. "Well, at least you're home now, and we can talk and stop all these stupid games. Are you hungry? Do you want to go eat or order something home? How was your cruise? Did you have fun?" I asked, trying to put her in an awkward position. "I know your sister was probably busy every night, but what about you?" "Steve, That's one hell of a question to ask your wife. Do you think I went on the cruise to cheat on you? I have no idea why you went on the cruise since you didn't want to talk to me about it. Hell, in theory, you could have fun every night. If you're going to keep that tone, I don't think I'll talk to you tonight. What other news? I said, still looking at her. To answer your question, no, I didn't cheat on you. Maybe I should ask you about these things, she replied. There aren't many island guys in California. I tried to soften the situation, and no, I didn't sleep with anyone. I'd love to say I slept with someone without actually having intimacy with her, but I don't think Carol would like that. Let's order pizza, open a bottle of wine, and talk. I agree. Order it while I change, she said, going upstairs. I wondered if she had moved back into our bedroom while I was gone. I'd probably find out later tonight. We talked about nonsense for the first hour, those little things people bring up when they're afraid to broach serious topics. After another 20 minutes, I started asking difficult questions. Did you figure out anything during the cruise with that airhead? I asked. Steve, I wish you wouldn't call her that. Yes, she's been married a couple of times, but she just hasn't met the right one yet. Carol, she had 2 husbands who loved her, and she cheated on both of them. And this is the woman you went with to decide if you want to stay married to me? Should I start packing now, or have you already packed everything? I said, trying to joke. Very funny. You know I didn't do anything like that, but I have to admit I was pretty mad when I came back and you weren't there. That was one of the reasons I left when I did. I thought it would give you a little more time to think without knowing exactly where I was. I guess it was pretty cruel, but you deserved it after you announced about the cruise. Steve, if I had told you about the cruise earlier, all we would have done was argue. We didn't argue after I found out, but it was only 2 days, and damn, you left before I could explain my reasons for wanting to go. Well, has any important revelation occurred to you? I asked. Only that I still love you and want to stay married to you. Well, I won't if this continues like it has for the last 2 years, I told a surprised Carol. I really think she expected me to cry and run into her arms, but those days are long gone. I want a wife, not a roommate. I can always hire a cook or maid to do what you do, but it's much harder to hire a wife. That's what I want, and I won't settle for anything less. Steve, I've been a good wife to you for 25 years. Now suddenly you start demanding that I change, or what? Are you going to throw me away like a used rag? Do you see how wrong that is? Listen, Carol, I'm making no demands on you other than that I don't want to be celibate anymore. If you're no longer interested in making love to me, I'll find someone who will be interested. I'm not going to give it up at any time, 50 years, I said, perhaps too loudly, trying to get my point across. We already discussed this. I can't do this 24 hours a day. I don't even want to, Carol said. I asked 3 times a week, and you said you'd think about it, but apparently, you thought I was kidding. Don't you miss the closeness we had, touching, hugging, curling up cozy in bed before sleep? I really miss it and want it back. But you started playing these stupid games. Carol, we both started playing games that only drove us apart to the point where I don't even know how to start getting closer again, I said sadly. Let's start from the beginning, she said, standing up and taking my hand. Breakfast was quick. I had to get back to work with only 2 hours of sleep. I looked a little tired. Looks like you need a vacation to unwind after your vacation, my secretary Jill joked. She asked if I needed a cup of coffee. There were a few things that required my immediate attention, but by midday, everything was back to normal. I see you're still alive, Diana said, walking past my office a little before 4 o'clock. Did you talk or just exchange insults last night? Both, I said with a weak smile. I guess we can't solve everything in one night. At least you guys started talking again, she said as she passed by. We talked and talked again over the next month. We solved some of our problems but ultimately realized we couldn't handle them all alone. Carol got the name David from a friend who had used his services many years ago and said he was quite good. On Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we found ourselves in his office. What can I do for you too? Was the first question from his lips. We both talked for almost half an hour about how we grew apart and the problems we had, including ones. Look, I can't solve your problems overnight, but if you're ready, we can work on the issues that are tearing you apart and see where it takes us. We both agreed and began the long road to recovery. We met twice a week. Mostly, we were together in sessions, but sometimes he wanted to see us separately to work on our individual problems. He didn't go around sharp corners. He told me that what I did in California was treason and that what Carol did on the cruise was also crossing the line. It turns out that my wife also found someone she liked on the cruise and, as she put it, went as far as second base with him more than once. She got a little annoyed when I said that I hadn't heard that expression since high school, but at least we tried. When he asked us where we saw ourselves in a year and in 5 years, we both had no idea, but it got us thinking. When he asked us how much intimacy is too little and how much is too much, we were still on opposite ends of the spectrum. Once a week was too little for me, and 3 times a week was too much for Carol. But we kept fighting. It took almost 5 months for us to achieve our first real breakthrough and another month to iron out the last 2 problems. David was happy with our results, and for the first time in a long time, Carol and I were happy too. Steve, when I received your letter about wanting to go on this cruise, I was thrilled, Lori told me, standing on the deck and looking out at the water. But when you said you were bringing your wife, it dampened my enthusiasm a little, she added, holding my hand. I told her I wanted to go alone, but she said no way after I had to tell her about our last trip together. I replied with a smile. She said you won't share the bed with me this time. Well, if she accidentally falls overboard, I say in advance that it's not my fault, Lori said, kissing me on the cheek. Steve, I can't leave you unattended for a minute, I heard my wife say from behind me as she walked up and kissed me on the lips. And this must be Lori, she said, holding out her hand. I've heard a lot about you, and you're just as charming as Steve said, she added, now looking me over. You know what a flatterer he is, Lori replied. Not really, but he's starting to learn if he knows what's best for him, she said with a smile. Well, shall we go out to dinner? Carol asked. I'm so glad you were moved to our table because I still have a couple of questions about the winery tour that I need to discuss, she said as the two of them laughed, looking at me when I blushed. I was dead meat, and I knew it. Our table in the dining room seated 10 people, and by the time the waiter brought our drinks, everyone was already seated. There were 4 couples, including us, and one good-looking young guy who sat next to Lori. I nudged her with my elbow and gave a thumbs up, to which she hit me in the arm. Introductions were the order of the day as each couple told everyone their names and where they were from. I imagined us as Steve and Diane Moore from the sunny state of Florida as I looked at Lori, who was next in line. That's right, my wife is Diana, not Carol. You see, we finally solved our problems with David's help, just not in the way we both planned, I said. It turned out that we were both on different pages in our lives. Carol had reached a point where she wanted to relax and let life take its course, as long as it didn't interfere with her peaceful lifestyle. She began to enjoy her freedom and didn't want anyone to dictate what she should or shouldn't do, including me. She was more than happy with intimacy every now and then to relieve the tension, but it was overkill when she wasn't really in the mood to even please me. We discussed where we wanted to be in 1 and 5 years and discovered that we weren't even on the same planet. We decided to separate, and now we get along better than when we were together. Carol and I sold our house and divided everything equally. We used the same lawyer, and within 3 months, everything was completed, and we were both much happier. She wanted to do it again for old time's sake, but I told her that while I would love to, I was in a relationship and couldn't cheat on Diana any more than I could cheat on her. You see, a week after our last session, I arrived at Diana's doorstep. We talked and had dinner, but she told me that she would never date anyone from work. I solved this problem by taking days off from my 8 weeks of vacation, cashing out my 401k, and investing in a thriving travel agency. We started dating the next day. I rented an apartment not far from work with the option of renting on a monthly basis, but after 3 months, I moved in with Diana. She dated 2 men after her husband's death, but neither of them lived up to her expectations. Looks like her husband was more than just good in bed. After our 3rd date, with her driving her car, we stopped at her house. Steve, I'm not Carol, and I never will be. I don't like games, and if you have a problem with me, I expect you to tell me so we can figure it out. You and your wife have ruined your marriage, and if we are going to move forward, I will not tolerate what you did. I expect honesty, loyalty, and you to put my needs first, and I will do the same for you. If you can't handle it, there is no point in wasting our time on something that has no chance of success, Diana said. Okay, Diana, tell me how you really feel. Don't beat around the bush. Tell me straight. I can handle it, I said with a stupid smile on my face as I grabbed and kissed her. That was nice, I said, stroking her arm as we lay next to each other. Nice? Nice, she repeated. Didn't I rock your world? I thought you'd say it was bloody wonderful, the best thing ever, she said, now leaning on her elbow and looking at me. Baby, it doesn't matter if you make my eyes bug out of my head or if we make tender love and then cuddle for the rest of the night. What matters is that we're together, I told her. After 2 months, she wanted to make sure we were exclusive. 3 months later, I moved in with her, and 6 months later, we got married in a small ceremony with just friends and family. Her daughter was her maid of honor, and I had the 2 best people, my sons, by my side. During the planning, she asked if I wanted to invite my ex, but I told her that it was our day. Although we were on good terms, Carol was my past, and she was my future. All she said was, good answer. Since we never got around to taking a formal vacation, I organized a cruise for just the 2 of us. I emailed Lori and asked if she was interested, and she immediately replied, yes. When I finally told Lori I was bringing my new wife, although she was more than a little disappointed, she still wanted to meet us. She said, I just need to meet the woman who grabbed you so quickly after you became available. We had a great time. Lori never contacted the young guy at our table, but she did mention someone in Denver who was more than interested in her. He's sweet and all, but he wants to make an honest woman out of me, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. Let me give you some friendly advice, Diana said, leaning over and whispering to Lori. If it's worth it, grab it ASAP. If not, it might not be available when you're ready, she said with a big smile. This story reminds us that even long years of marriage can break down due to reticence and deception. It is important not only to maintain trust, but also to be honest with each other in order to overcome difficulties together. After all, as the saying goes, the truth always comes to the surface and it is up to us to deal with its consequences. Remember, better the bitter truth than sweet lies. Write your opinions and stories in the comments. See you for more videos.